All right, everybody, welcome to the stream. My name is Jayan Raid. I am your host. I'm an associate professor of management at McGill University, where I specialize in negotiation and conflict resolution. So every week, I bring negotiation experts who come from sales, procurement, management, mediation, arbitration, even law enforcement. And my mission here is to help you elevate your negotiation game. So let's get this show started. We have 3 segments, half an hour each. The first one is called Master Negotiator Tactics. The second one is called Master Negotiators React. And the third one is Master Negotiators Q&A. If you're in the chat, please type in where you're coming from so we know who you are, where you're coming from. You can be on our radar. Something to know is that even though LinkedIn lets you post reactions like hearts and thumbs up, and I know you guys in the past shows you've used those, we can't actually see them from the software we're using. So type comments if you want to join. And if you hear a quote that you're interested in, please share it on your profile with a link to the event because the recording will be part of the event. So we will start the show right now. Let me just play the jingle and I will let our guests in. All right, so we have our 2 guests. Ethan is not by his desk. We'll see if he can hear us. Hey, Ethan, can you hear us?
I can. I wanted to slide in all fancy off camera.
Oh, that's amazing. Okay, so I'm going to introduce you guys, but first I'm going to tell you what the show is about. So Master Negotiators Tactics is all about the how-to of negotiation. In this segment, we focus on practical role playing. So I will use a deck of cards that I have used as an educational material that I've designed. And each card features a negotiation situation. And so your task is to role play how you would approach that situation. So let's dive in and bring these scenarios to life. If you're in the chat, by the way, you can also participate and I will feature some of the comments that you post. So we have 2 guests today. We have Ethan Nkana, who is the founder of Rocky Mountain Physician Agency, RMPA, an agency negotiating deals for doctors. Ethan has experience in healthcare leadership, law, and business education. Hello, Ethan. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jayan. Happy to be here with you.
Thank you. And we have Josh Weiss, who is an iconic figure in the negotiation and conflict resolution world. He's the co-founder of the Global Negotiation Initiative at Harvard University. He's also the author of the book of real negotiations that I will link in the description. Today, Josh will give away 1 copy of his book on Kindle to one of you guys. And so to be considered to receive the book for free from Josh, you have to post a comment during the show, either on LinkedIn, on Facebook, or on YouTube. So let's just start maybe with you, Josh. What brought you to the world of negotiation and what keeps you interested about it?
Well, thanks, Jayan, and Ethan, nice to meet you. So what brought me to the world of negotiation, I started getting involved in the broader realm of conflict resolution. And honestly, I kind of found that when I would talk about conflict resolution versus negotiation, I noticed people's reactions were quite different. And so I started to gravitate toward negotiation and noticed that more and more people were interested, could relate to it, wanted to know more and things along those lines. And it's also, probably one of the most practical processes in the suite of approaches that we have when it comes to dealing with conflict, et cetera. So, I think in general, that's kind of what brought me down this road. What keeps me in, I think, is that this is a never-ending journey. You're always learning something new. There's so many different disciplines that feed into negotiation. And I think that's exciting. And I also do a lot of work with different companies and governments and find myself in lots of different realms where I have to figure out how do I help people to think through this negotiation challenge and deal with it most effectively or represent them adequately or whatever it might be. And it's fascinating and it challenges me as much as I think it might challenge them. So I think those are the primary reasons why I got in and why I stay and continue to be fascinated by it all.
Thank you so much. What about you, Ethan? What brought you to negotiation and what keeps you interested about it?
Yeah, not nearly as eloquent as Josh's experience. I got laid off from a job.
Right.
And I didn't really know what was next. I wanted to be a hospital CEO. That was my whole career path. Went to law school, got my MBA, spent 15 years working in hospitals. And that came to a screeching halt when I got laid off in 2019. And for the last 4 years, I've been using the skills that I learned working on the hospital side now to negotiate physicians' employment contracts akin to the way a sports athlete or a musician or a movie star might have an agent. That's what I do for doctors, helping them negotiate their contracts. And the reason I stay in it is because I love what I do.
Yeah.
My mom's a doctor, so it kind of feels as though there's um, this following in her footsteps in her career, and so I get to help her contemporaries. And to me, I love working who I get to work for. The content of my work is fun. I enjoy contract negotiation, really in the room with hospital execs, advocating for my doctors. That's the most fun for me.
It's a really good point. Something I've noticed about people is negotiation skills are orthogonal to actual intelligence. So you can see extremely smart people or terrible negotiators, and then you can see maybe like just entry level kind of people who are great negotiators. So definitely providing advisory to doctors is great. And I've seen, you post sometimes on LinkedIn, and I highly encourage everybody to follow Ethan and Josh on LinkedIn. But you post sometimes pretty amazing, increases in negotiation. How is the process going for you? How do you advise people for that?
It's very straightforward. And one of the important parts of our business is educating doctors on how they can do this themselves.
Right.
Now, because this is all I do, this is all I've ever done, we can make your lives easier, no stress. We don't get paid unless we help you make more money. So there's all of these reasons doctors choose to work with us, but it's very straightforward.
Right.
So I'd say the secret to kind of what we do, the secret sauce is I never talk to your current employer first. 90+% of my doctors stay with their current employer for more money, better schedule, better support, etc. But we never start conversations there.
Right.
The first thing that I do is I go get my doctor's offers from right around town. Hey, I have an amazing general surgeon who's looking for her next opportunity, who's interested.
Right.
And then what I do when I have stronger or comparable offers, I'll then come back to the current employer and say, hey, Dr. Smith would like to make, a little bit more money, a better schedule. Employer always says the same thing. No. That's when I say, okay, I understand. Just so you know, Dr. Smith is going to go across the street to your competitor, and her patients and revenue are going with her. So if you still feel that way, and that's when the conversation changes immediately. Hospital executives need to see that there's actual threat of that revenue leaving for them to actually take action. And that's the thing that over 15 years, I saw doctors get wrong so many times is they thought, well, we're really good doctors, so they'll pay me more if I ask for it. And that's just not the reality of the business of medicine. So I always get my doctors a competing offer first, even when they want to stay. And then I come back to your current employer and we renegotiate the terms of your contract.
I think so I've noticed the exact same thing. The same thing happens in academia. You think you're underpaid. You go to see your dean. You tell them, I think I'm underpaid. I think this is how much I should get paid. And they say, do you have a competing offer? And I think it's kind of a dumb strategy from management to do that, because then you're telling people to go shop around. And then in their minds, they're already thinking, putting themselves, they're writing a resume, they're sending a letter. They're picturing themselves, in a different organization. Like, you don't want people to do that. Have you noticed the same thing, Josh?
I have. And I think part of this comes down to this question of power, right? In that people's perception is that they hold it and they hold all of it, and the other side has none. And I think when you have a doctor who is successful, who can deal with lots of different things, they bring a kind of power to the table that I think people misunderstand. I often say to people in as they're preparing for negotiation, if you view yourself as having some power and understand how you do, I mean, I ran an organization before, and when I had great employees, they had way more power than they realized because I
Yeah.
didn't want them to go anywhere. Finding good employees, good people is difficult. And so when I help them, I even would say to them, listen, I don't want to lose you because I know how hard it is to find somebody. But I think you want to make sure that when people are negotiating, that they break power down and say, where is it that I have an ability to influence a
Yeah.
situation? Because too often it's viewed as an either or situation. And I think particularly in negotiation, it very rarely mirrors that every one side holds all the cards.
No, but it's just people don't realize that retention matters. And so managers a lot of times, they're asking people to consider other opportunities where in reality they really don't want to lose them. I can think about, an admin assistant we lost that was kind of like shopping around for a better alternative. And you're thinking like, wow, like this is so stupid. Like, why are we doing this?
Well, and unfortunately, sometimes it's that signal that needs to be sent, which is,
Yeah.
it's too bad. But it's along the lines of, when you have car dealers who are right next to each other.
Yeah.
I've never been able to quite figure that out, why you would give people the opportunity to just go to the next dealer and say, I got this offer from them. Can you do better? Right. I would put my car dealer as far away as I possibly could from everybody else, to not give them. Essentially what you're doing is, right, we're talking about a Batten analysis. And effectively saying, where are my alternatives here, et cetera.
Right. Okay, so let's start with the game. And so the way it works is I'm going to give you a scenario, and I really want you to put yourself in the situation of the person and kind of tell me how you would approach this. And so the goal is really to give people practical advice on how to tackle a variety of scenarios. And so the first one that I selected is settle a dispute over noise and privacy with a coworker. And so you imagine you're working with somebody and there's issues with noise and privacy. How would you do that? Maybe Josh, do you want to start?
Sure. So the first thing I would do, I mean, you want me to kind of explain how I would go about this as opposed to actually saying it?
I think you can actually say it, whatever you feel more comfortable. But let's just imagine I'm your coworker,
Okay.
and you have an issue with either noise or privacy with me.
So, hey, Jan, for a walk, just 5-10 minutes to talk about something that I think would be beneficial to both of us to kind of sort out. I've kind of, one of the things that I'm experiencing is I'm having a little challenge getting some work done, and would love to talk more about that with you. And I'm sure there are probably things that I do that might be slightly challenging for you as well. So do you think we could find some time today to go have that walk?
Sure. And so that I really like it. I think it's great. What would be the point of getting the walk? What are you trying to achieve with that?
So the point of the walk, and I worked on a project called the Abraham Path Initiative for over 20 years, and it's actually a long distance walking and traveling route across the Middle East in the footsteps of Abraham. And the idea was that, and what I've noticed and what we learned doing this, and there's actually quite a bit of research out there, that when you go for a walk and you're walking side by side with somebody, a conversation is very different than being opposed. And in fact, there's actually a lot of research as well that suggests that when people walk, they engage much more in problem solving, creativity happens. There's lots of interesting quotes from people throughout history who talked about their best ideas came from walking, and that process of walking and thinking. And so it partly is designed to diffuse right away and say, hey, instead of just sitting down and having a conversation right now, and I don't know if you have something else going on and you can't focus on what I'm asking you, better to sort of check in with somebody, and instead of just assuming they can drop everything
Yeah.
and talk to you, because it's not all about you too, right? So I think it's that combination of, hey, can we do this at some point today, and B, can we get into a more informal setting? I find that when you get people out of more formal settings and into this informal space, they're a little less defensive and more willing to take things in. And then the last thing is, I tried to sort of share that I'm also open to the fact that there may be things that I'm doing that might be annoying to you that I can change. So this isn't just a one-way street.
I really like that you mentioned that at the end, that you're also open to criticism or feedback, because that's what I was about to say. Like, what if I'm annoyed that maybe you're cooking smelly foods in the office, right? Like, a lot of people get defensive when you tell them to change something, and they can try to like find, well, maybe I'm noisy, but you eat smelly foods at your desk, So I like that you already prepared for that. Perfect. So,
Okay.
Ethan, I think maybe we can switch to the next scenario. And so the next scenario is how to manage a dissatisfied, I don't know if I can even show the cards. I don't think I can. How to manage a dissatisfied customer. So imagine that I'm your customer and I am dissatisfied with the service. How would you approach this?
Yeah, and that certainly happens in reality. I think my disposition leads me to kind of take the same response to almost any situation where there's potential conflict or a dispute where we need to compromise. And I lead with curiosity. So to me, if you're dissatisfied, there's unmet expectations.
Right.
There's something that you expected me to do or an outcome that didn't occur. And so I want to get curious about, where did those expectations come from? What was I potentially not clear about? And I've said this to clients, what does resolution look like for you? So asking them, how can I resolve this to your satisfaction? Not to say that that's what we're going to do, but it helps me understand what you would see as fulfilling to you in terms of an outcome here.
I think it's a really interesting answer. I'm currently dissatisfied with a company that's working for a building and that provided a service that I really believe didn't meet expectations. And I voiced it to them and they got defensive about it. And so the issue is now I'm just going to post a review about it, right? Like, what do you want me to do? Like, you're not even listening to what I'm telling you. I feel like you overcharged me. You were deceptive about, the way you presented your services. Like, if you're not even going to apologize about it or acknowledge, this thing, then I have a puppy on my laps if you're here. just so you know.
Oh, what a cutie.
I'm having a little nightmare, I feel.
What's your pup's name?
Her name is Sherilyn.
Oh,
But I call her a
Sherilyn.
baby a lot because she's kind of like a little baby, and so
What a
she's
cutie.
really cute. So really great answer. Thank you so much. So now maybe we can talk, Josh, we can come back to you. And so the next card is how to address work-life balance issues with a supervisor. And I see this a lot where people want to work 4 days a week, or they want to have an afternoon off, or they want to work part of the week from home, and they just don't know how to bring it up. Like, how would you bring it up to a supervisor?
Yeah, again, I would begin by saying that, that I'd really like to talk about something and can we schedule a time? I find that a lot of times when people just surprise the other and say, hey, do you have 5 minutes to talk or whatever, it's not the right way to do it. So be a little more formal in that sense. I would also frame it in particular as, look, especially if I really like where I am, I would frame it and say, listen, I love working here and I want to be here for the long term, but I'm beginning to feel burned out. And I've got to find the right work-life balance. And I'm hoping that you, A, want me to be here for the long term as well. And B, that you be willing to kind of think creatively with me about how I can manage this more effectively. Because right now it's just not happening. That's really how I think I would go about it. And then, and I would try to come with some ideas of, what that might look like for me. Because I think to Ethan's point, you can end up with some different perspectives. People have different needs. And so you don't want to assume what a work-life balance looks like for somebody. Think what you want to do. But if you're the one who's asking, I think you want to have some thoughts. This is something I do a lot when I'm talking with folks about a job or a salary negotiation. I try to get them to really think about all the other things that their employer could provide to them as part of that conversation. And I think what you do, those things may not always be possible, but what you do is you get into the head of your supervisor, that you're willing to be creative and kind of think differently about all of this.
I really like your approach. I think what I like the most is you're taking a situation that a lot of times is seen as win-lose, such as I want to work less, or I want, and the employer doesn't want to accommodate it, or I want to have more flexibility in the schedule and the employer doesn't really see what benefit they have to that, or why they should give you this accommodation. But you're making it as, I'm going to get burnt out and I really want to stay here for the long term, which really aligns your goals and the goals of the employer because they don't want to lose you. So I really think it's a great approach.
I think so. And I think the other piece of it too is that you're also open to the reality that they may not be able to accommodate certain things, but
Yeah,
that you could say, you could get down to, of course, down to the level of underlying interest and say, if that won't work, here's really what's driving me. And
yeah,
so are there other ways that we could try to address that challenge that I'm having? Right. And so you
amazing.
pull it up in that way.
That's
You
really
know,
good.
JN, I'm gonna
Yeah,
go off script, man. Maybe you
go
won't
for it.
have me back because of this, but like I feel like we're overestimating the reasonableness of employers.
Right.
There is no employer I have ever seen or worked for that when you come in and say, I want to work 4 days a week, 4.5 days a week, they're like, I want you to be whole, happy, and healthy. We'll do it for you. That's just not realistic. Look at the layoffs every single month from tech companies, thousands of people. We are overestimating the reasonableness of employers. They are letting people go. They are giving appreciation through pizza parties. And we're saying that if we ask them to think long term about my personal health, that's not realistic. No employer I've seen or heard of that's doing well does that.
It's too bad though. It feels like it should be
It's
something
disgusting.
that
It's
would be
disgusting.
yeah. But you were, I think I was reading a post of yours a few months ago, or maybe last year, where you were explaining that every single bump in your salary was because of moving, right? Because of changing employers. And I think at the end of the day, it's really too bad that it's this way. Now we're in a culture where people jump from job to job every 2 years.
So let me give you the details to that.
Yeah.
Actually, over 6 years, my salary went up 100% with the same employer. So I started at $70,000. I had no other offers. So I asked, I said, hey, can I get an increase? Because I have a law degree, an MBA, and 10 years of experience. They said, okay, you can go from 70,000 to 72,000. That's
Yep.
nonsense. So over that 6 years, every couple of years or every few years, I say, it's time for a promotion. And I knew what the answer was going to be. Ethan, you're not ready. We don't think you're ready. All right. I thought you might say that. Just so you know, I've gotten 2 offers from competitors here in town, and they've offered me a promotion and more money.
They think
And
you're ready, right?
all
And
of a sudden, that money comes in. So I'm telling you, over the course of 6 years, if you think your employer is going to offer you more money, a better schedule just because you asked, you are going to disillusion yourself. You are going to set yourself up for failure. Like Josh said, you need to have an alternative.
yeah.
You need to have, just because you're a good employee. I work with phenomenal doctors. A neurosurgeon called me in tears last week. A neurosurgeon.
Yeah.
So if any of you are thinking my employers are going to be reasonable, they're going to do right by me, you're fooling yourself.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, that's definitely not been my experience, and certainly the people that I've worked with as well. I think a lot of it comes down to the relationship that you have. If this is a world, there are certain industries where, yeah, you're a lot more disposable than others. And I've worked with a number of doctors, and in many of the cases that I've worked with regard to them, they had a really good relationship with the hospital, and the hospital didn't want to lose them. And they didn't, and I can think of at least 2 instances where the doctors didn't have to threaten to go elsewhere. They said, look, this is what I bring to the table. Here's what I'm doing from a research point of view. Here's what I'm doing from a practice point of view. And there was an amicable way that they found
What
forward.
happened?
So they got a raise because the hospital didn't want to lose them because they understood what it was that they brought to the table. It wasn't, it didn't have to come down to that. They had been there for 15 years. And so the hospital saw the value that they were bringing. So I think it
Yeah.
depends on the industry, and I think it depends
I
on.
don't think that that advice is going to help anybody, because if you say, hey, my relationship is good with them, and you end up getting screwed, who pays for that? And also, what about, how does that account for all of the people who get laid off for business reasons? They didn't do anything. They had a great relationship and they got laid off and kicked out into the street.
Well,
So,
yeah. I mean, all I'm saying is in those instances, those people had, when you have a productive relationship and you understand the value you're bringing to the table, people aren't so quick to let you go. That,
Sure,
look,
you won't get laid off if you're a good employee.
that's a good point. And actually, we're going to review a video in another segment from an employee who's getting laid off, kind of like in the manner you describe, Ethan, where they're spending 5 minutes on the phone with her just to fire her. And but I think so I've published several papers on the healthcare industry, and especially the violence against doctors and nurses in ERs. And really what I've noticed again and again, and there's so many studies on this, is hospitals don't take very good care of their employees. It's you really see doctors who are paid a lot of money, but they're overworked, they're burnt out. It's pretty insane. But I have to say, it all depends on leverage. I did my PhD dissertation on remote work, and up until the pandemic, it was just a topic nobody was interested about. Like, nobody wanted to talk about it. I had to switch gears and publish on something else because journal editors were telling me, like, stop focusing on the 3% of the population that does remote work. Focus on the 97% that don't. Like, it's just not going to happen. But because of the pandemic, the power has shifted, because now I think a lot of companies have decided that they will offer remote work arrangements so that they can capture the best performers from other companies. And so now, if you go to see your employer and talk about remote work and they say no, they know now that you'll probably leave and they're going to lose you. They don't have as much power as before. And so maybe for arrangements in terms of schedule, maybe this will also happen this way. We'll see. We'll see in the next few years. So now let's go to Ethan. So the next card that I have is you're negotiating with somebody you dislike. So it's really somebody, maybe you had a fight with them, just somebody you dislike. What would be your approach so that you can still get a deal with that person?
Always focus on what's in it for the other person. For 15 years, I saw doctors go into negotiations and say, I'm a really good surgeon. I've been here for 10 years. I've been loyal. I do this procedure that nobody else does. And they got laughed out of the room.
Yeah.
Hundreds of doctors. And so anytime I'm negotiating with someone where there's some adversarial relationship, I already know what matters to you. What's motivating you? Is it money? Is it schedule? Is it power? Is it I need to understand. And that's where, I think law school did have something to do with kind of my ability to do this job. A good attorney knows what the other side is going to say before they say it. And that's how I approach negotiations with hospitals. And, we have an adversarial relationship where my doctors want more than what they're getting, and the hospital does not want to give them more. They probably want to give them less. So I need to know what the benefit is to the hospital so that I can articulate that in a way that is advantageous for my client.
Great point. Thank you so much. So we are reaching the end of this segment. Thank you so much, you guys, for participating in this little role play. I think this was very, very valuable. Please, if you're in the attendance, go and follow them on LinkedIn if you haven't done already. Their profile is part of the description. And stick around for the next segment, which is Master Negotiators React. All right, everybody, welcome to Master Negotiators React. Thank you so much, you guys, for being my guests. Every week, I invite 2 negotiation professionals who have backgrounds in law enforcement, business, diplomacy, you name it. So today, I'm joined by 2 master negotiators, Ethan Nkana, who is the founder of Rocky Mountain Physician Agency, which is an agency negotiating deals for doctors, kind of like a sports agency or a sports agent. Ethan has experience in healthcare, leadership, law, and business education. Hey, Ethan, thank you so much for accepting my invitation.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me, Jan.
My pleasure. And we have Josh Weiss, who is an iconic figure in the negotiation and conflict resolution world. He is the co-founder of the Global Negotiation Initiative at Harvard University. He's also the author of the book of real world negotiations. Today, Josh will actually give a copy of his book on Kindle to one of the people in the attendance. All you have to do to be considered for the free book is to post a comment during the show. So today, we're actually going to watch a video we watched a few weeks ago, but there was a sound problem. So we're going to watch it again and make sure that there is no sound problem. It's a pretty famous video from a woman who gets fired from her job at Cloudflare. I'm going to share the screen so that you guys can see it. I'm going to hit play, and then I'll stop at various moments and we will comment. So let me just share this. Okay. This is what we have. Perfect. Let me hit play.
Hey, Brittany.
Hi.
Yes, I'm so sorry. My name's Rosie. I'm just joining the call. Nice to meet you. I'm on the HR team.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Brittany.
Hi.
Thanks for meeting with me and Rosie. We have an important meeting today. We finished our evaluations of 2023 performance. This is where you have not met Cloudflare expectations for performance. We've decided to part ways with you.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop you right there.
Sure.
So I started.
So before we get in, can you guys hear the video fine?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. So what do you think of the approach already from the HR person and the anonymous person who joined? It sounds very scripted, it sounds contrived. It sounds like fake emotions.
It sounds very contrived, and I think it's also beyond that. There's no relationship at all with her. They're completely random new people who are just clearly sort of dropping this on her. And she also knew this was coming because other people have been experiencing this. So it wasn't a surprise. So I think there's a lot of problems right off the bat.
What do you think about it, Ethan?
I mean, it's par for the course for employers. And if you think your employer cares about you, you're delusional.
Yeah. I think, I feel for her. It must be a horrible situation to know for an entire day or a few days that people are getting fired left and right, and then you book a meeting and then you have to wait all this time. And then you have two randos that you've never met, who are pretending to have emotions about it. It just sounds it's a bit upsetting. You wouldn't want to.
We're upset because we're watching it, right? We're upset because she gave us a view into this experience that we never get to see.
Exactly.
But there are thousands of people every single month from tech companies that have overhired, underperformed, that this is happening to. So this idea that your employer cares about you, no, they don't. And I know I'm coming off abrasive and somebody's going to say, well, I'm a walking middle finger. That's fine. But the fact of the matter is this is happening every single day.
Yeah, it really is. So I think it's actually a great point. Now, people have a smartphone and they can just record whatever they want. What I think it's pretty badass to actually record it. I don't know that I would have done it. I'm not sure I would have done it and posted it. I would probably have recorded it because you can't stop people from recording what's happening in their house. If they want to record all of their meetings, people have security cameras in their houses, whatever. But then it's the posting it. What I thought was really interesting about it is she doesn't care. She's like, screw this, you're mistreating me and I'm going to post it. And the reaction were overwhelmingly positive, to her posting it. I don't think Cloudflare, even if it's illegal to record people without their consent, it doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, she posted it and it's done and millions of people have seen it. So let's see how she approaches this pretty bad situation.
Started August 25th. I've been on a 3-month ramp, and then it was 3 weeks of December, and then a week of Christmas, and then here we are. I have had the highest activity amongst my team. Since I've started, I have had 3 contracts out, done a really great job managing my deals up until the very end that decided not to close last minute. So I don't think that makes a lot of sense for me in my Cloudflare journey here so far. Also,
Can we pause here
every
for a
single
second,
one-on-one
Jan?
I've had with my
Yeah.
I remember when I was getting laid off, I remember doing exactly what she's doing right now,
Yeah.
trying to justify why you shouldn't do what you're going to do no matter what I say.
Yeah.
This right here, like, there's nothing that's positive that's going to come from this, but it's a natural instinct to want to say, like, no, but I did all these things. I did so, like, you're wrong. Like, I feel exactly what I think she feels right now.
You know, it's interesting because, and I agree with you. I think it's a very, very human, organic feeling to do that. But I feel like HR kind of screwed up here because they don't need to give you a reason. And so if you're going to give a reason, you should have a real one. You can't just fire people after 3 months, you know, when they're ramping up as salespeople. And then tell them they're underperforming. Like, they're not going to be on board with that. They're going to fight you on this, which is irrelevant because at the end of the day, you're still going to fire them. So I don't know. I thought it was I was given, when I was an entrepreneur, I was given as advice, you know, if you want to open the door to legal action, start giving reasons to people as to why you're firing them. At least in France, you can get legal action because of that. Because then people can reframe it in any way they want, like discrimination, you know, whatever. I just think it's pretty dumb of them, without having the actual data, to tell an employee who's been here for 3 months, you have been underperforming. It's not a good argument. What do you think, Josh?
Well, I think, you know, I mean, as I work with parties, I always say, listen, you know, you have to be incredibly careful about the rationale that you're providing people. And you have to expect them to say, why is that? Why do you think that's the case? Or why do you feel like that's reasonable? And they clearly don't have a justification here. And I think when that happens, it just falls on deaf ears, and you know that there's not a sincerity to it at all. And so, you know, anytime you're making a first offer or whatever it is, you know, I always say to folks, you're going to have to expect people to say, why do you think that's reasonable? And if you don't have an answer, you're going to be stuck. And again, you know, there's different aspects of how this plays out, but I think you hear very clearly when she said, you know, when they say, well, you're not meeting your metrics, she's like, of course I am. And that's, you know, and so it just makes the whole sort of notion of delivering this kind of a message sound even more hollow.
Yeah,
Alex,
and even the emotions. Go for it.
Alex said something in the chat that I think is really important to point out. As at-will employees, you can get fired for any reason as long as it's not illegal. So them giving you a reason is more like maybe palatable for the conversation sometimes. But if you look at, like, most of what will happen is you'll get laid off because of business reasons. And as long as it's not an illegal reason, meaning you're in a protected class, color, you know, race, etc., they don't have to give you anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's like you're out of here, and you know, we don't like the color of your shirt. That's not illegal.
I mean, you're going to see later in the video, but it feels like they opened a door to something they just didn't know how to deal with. And she's going to really demonstrate to them that they don't know how to deal with it.
My manager, every conversation I've had with him, he has been giving me nothing but, I am doing a great job, I have had great activity, I have really great meetings, I'm picking up the products very quickly, and things have been going really, really well. I make really great relationships with my clients. So I disagree that my performance hasn't been, I haven't met performance expectations, when I certainly have, just because I haven't closed anything officially.
I hear you.
Also, why are you doing this and not my manager? Not, you know, we've never met, so this seems a little odd that my manager has no idea that this has been happening and the director has no idea that this has been happening. So I'm just definitely confused, and yeah, I would love like an explanation that makes sense.
I have to say, I mean, you can tell she's emotional, and I would be emotional too, because they're literally evaluating you as a person and saying you didn't meet their expectations. You know, it's pretty hard, and I think that managers should definitely be involved in that kind of processes. It's just a matter of decency. You know, if you worked with somebody for a long time, don't let the dirty work done by somebody else that they don't know. Just do it yourself. Um,
Without
it plays a
question,
role.
I think that's a really big mistake here is, just dropping two people in here that she knows nothing about and has just been hearing that they're just coming along and firing people. I think whether she would have accepted it any differently, like if her manager was part of this, I think it would have added something important and it wouldn't have felt so random and so, sort of impersonal is really what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and in coming back to the point you guys made, which is that sometimes companies also fire good employees, which sounds ridiculous, right? Like it sounds stupid, but they just have a business decision that somebody with an Excel somewhere made the decision to fire 20 people, and then you're on that Excel. But actually, the CEO of Cloudflare, I don't have his exact response now, but he had to respond after all of this. And he said himself that sometimes Cloudflare fires good employees and it's okay. And I was just wondering, why are you saying that? Like, what's even the point of saying that? It's just so dumb. Like, why do you fire employees?
By the way, it also brings up the question of there's not really a negotiation going on here, right?
No.
This is a fait accompli. There isn't really room for her to say, hey, like, well, how can I stay? And I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. So in that sense, there's not really a negotiation. It's really more of a, how do you handle letting somebody go in this way? And this seems to be a bit of a textbook case of how you don't do it.
Yeah. It's how would you do that? How would you do better than this? What advice would you give these HR people on how to deal with this situation?
Ethan, you want to go or you want me to?
Yeah, I actually would echo what Josh already said, which is like, you need the manager in the room. That's the person that I've built a relationship with. So to me, that's one of many things that I think could help. I've had conversations like this. They never go well for anyone. So I don't know if I'm in a position to like say, oh, they should have done this or that. But I certainly want to hear that message from somebody that I have some semblance of a relationship with. And Josh also said something else that I thought was really poignant, which was, it's not a negotiation. I thought I did just what she was doing, which was, well, my girlfriend just moved an hour and a half away and we just got a house. This is not a negotiation, bro. Like, I did not appreciate that in that moment. So, those are the two things I would say, which Josh has already said.
The only thing I would say, by the way, is, as a company, if you're wanting to sort of do right by people, and that's a question, right? Like, what kind of reputation do you want as a company that you chew people up and spit them out whenever you feel like it? Or, do you want to try to find a way, for people? Like, first of all, I think it's really important, the best no's that you get, and I, had the opportunity to work with William Ury on his book, The Power of a Positive No. And the best no's are ones that are very matter of fact. You don't come up with all kinds of reasons. And people are much more likely to accept that than if you start adding in, well, this, that, like they did here, right? Like, you didn't meet performance metrics. It's very easy for somebody to say, well, tell me more. Like, what is it I'm not doing? And is there no ability to give me, like, I've been here 3 months, so you're not even giving me a chance to improve, right? So in that sense, that's not really, if you start to think down the road of where's this going to take me, it's not going to take me very far.
No.
But the question, I would have, if you wanted to make it into a negotiation, is there, what is it that you could, if you're in your mind and from a bottom line point of view and all of these things, we're letting this person go, right? If you're doing that, like, can you give them, are you willing to give them some kind of a soft landing? Are you willing to help them in some way, shape, or form to find something new, different elsewhere? You know, I've seen companies do that. It sounds strange, but I've seen some who say, like, we don't have anything for you. However, we have this scenario, this possibility, whatever. It doesn't happen a lot, but I've seen it. And I can tell you, when I've talked to those folks and said, what is your perception of this company? They will say, you know what, it didn't feel fair and reasonable to me, but at least they didn't just say, don't let the door hit your ass on the way out, right? They said, let us at least create something for you that makes this a little bit more palatable.
Yeah.
You know, I have hundreds of students a year. So do you, Josh, I imagine. And it's what they're doing is the equivalent of a student coming to me upset about their grade, or, you know, and I'm just telling them, this is why I failed you. And I haven't even looked at, you know, your essay or something. Like, of course, they're going to fight me on that. You know, if I'm going to tell them they fail my class, I need to have a really strong case as to why that's the case. And I need, a lot of times, by the way, when students come to me to complain about grades, it ends up being a discussion on what they can improve, you know, what were their shortcomings and what they can do better. And then they leave with a sense of fairness. You know, at the end of the day, they think, well, you know, now at least I know where to go with this. But if I'm going to tell somebody that they wrote like a shitty final, I better have read it. And I better know what's in the final. Otherwise, I should just not say anything, you know, just tell them you fail it. But that would be still stupid. And I'm really surprised she didn't have any improvement plan or anything, you know, any performance improvement plan. Like, it's a news to her that she's going to get fired. Pretty shitty. Let's continue the video and see what happens.
100%. Real quick, let me carve out the two threads. The latter of why I'm on this conversation, I'll put that one the second half, and Rosie might be better to explain the process of who's giving this information in the prior piece, which is your feedback and notes about your performance. So let me add a little color context to that. So just for clarification, you're not being singled out in this. Your peers are also being collectively assessed on performance. This is a collective calibration for Cloudflare. So I just want to clarify that piece. I won't be able to add any kind of specifics on numbers.
Wait, yeah, no, can you explain for me why Brittany Peach is getting let go?
I won't be able to go into specifics for numbers.
Wait, why though? I just started, I've been working extremely hard. Just because I haven't closed anything that has nothing to do with my performance on a 3-month ramp with just 1 month with 2 major holidays in the middle, I don't think that has anything to do with why I should be let go, if that makes sense. So I really need an answer and an explanation as to why Brittany Peach is getting let go, not why Cloudflare decided to hire too many people and are now actually realizing that they can't afford this many people and they're letting that go. If that's the real answer, I would rather just you tell me that instead of making up some bullshit and telling me that right before I lose my job from someone that I've never met before, if you can respect that.
Yeah, I can totally respect that, and I don't think Dom or myself today is going to give you any clarity or answers that's going to meet the expectations that you're communicating to us, Brittany. So I can't speak to.
So am I getting let go for no reason?
So, yeah, I mean, she makes a good point, right? Like, she's getting fired and they're coming up with some sort of a reason that they can't back with anything. I mean, my opinion is, if you're going to fire somebody for performance, you should be able to say, look, dude, you've been here for 3 months. You haven't closed anything. Everybody has closed something in your team except for you. And they all arrived at the same time. So we're letting you go. I'm so sorry. It's just the way it is. You know, if this is what the route you want to go, then you have to have some data. You can't say, we're letting you go for performance issues, but I'm not going to get into specifics about your numbers. Why, though? Why not get into specifics, you know, if that's the reason?
Well, I think the other piece to this is that when you think about being persuasive to somebody, you can't start from where you are. You have to start from where they are. And clearly, if you were to think about that and say, if we just tell her this isn't about her, you know, there's a bunch of other people who are getting laid off, is that really going to be persuasive? Is this going to help our conversation? And the reality is the answer is absolutely not. Like, people in that instance aren't going to care that 8 other people are being let go. They care that they're being let go. Right. And so this is one of those classic mistakes where when you're trying to persuade somebody, you tend to start with your own mind and where it is, as opposed to where is the person that I'm talking to? Where's their mind and their brain when it comes to this? And is this going to land in any way, shape, or form? And it's pretty easy to see that it wouldn't.
But yeah, very, very good point. And I think, Ethan, it connects a little bit to what you were saying earlier about some companies being a bit heartless, right? Where they just decide somewhere that you're going to be fired, and then somebody has like a forced meeting with you, and then you have to give them a reason which you don't know.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that companies should not lay people off. I'm saying employees need to have a realistic understanding of the strength of their relationship with the employer. So you might have all the loyalty in the world to them, but then end up on a call like this, 3 months, 6 months, a year down the road. But Josh said something in the last segment of the video that made me think about this phrase, clarity is kindness. And I think I've learned in my work with doctors, like, I can't hide the ball from them or try to sugarcoat things because the stakes are way too high. And so I have to be really clear with doctors about the situation, understanding that could cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars the longer they stay in that. And so I really value what Josh was saying in that last segment, because I think being clear and direct is appreciated by a lot of people, even though it's really difficult to do.
There's a great scene in the movie Moneyball. I don't know if you guys saw it.
Yeah.
With the guy with Brad Pitt, and then Jonah Hill, and Brad Pitt says, you need to go in and tell this player that he's been traded, and Jonah Hill's like, scared out of his mind to do that, and Brad Pitt says, just go in and treat it in a very sort of human but professional way, and say, hey, you've been traded. Go talk to the traveling secretary, blah, blah, blah. Like, very sort of, direct, but kind in the way that Ethan was talking about. And, the scene is great because he does it. The player's like, okay, takes the piece of paper, walks out. And I think, people know when they're being told, like, they want the truth.
Yeah.
And when it doesn't happen, the challenge is that not only is it disingenuous, but it also comes across that way, that you don't have a real reason for doing this. To Ethan's point, look, hey, or to your point, JN, you haven't closed a deal in 3 months. That's why. Like, that's your metric. It didn't happen. Sorry. Right? But
yeah,
I think
if you can support it.
Yeah.
Right. If you can support it, and if you can say that, we hired you, we told you needed to have closed at least one deal in 3 months. We had a meeting with you after 2 months. We're 3 months now, and, you just have not done that. I think this would be better. There is a lot of research on something that's called procedural justice, which is how people get a sense of fairness. And what the research says is, in a bunch of experiments, is that people are okay having an unfavorable outcome, but the process that led to the outcome has to be perceived as fair. And if the process was not fair, they will reject the outcome. And so that's why whenever a student, for example, wants to discuss a low grade, I've learned to always spend time with them, because at the end of the day, they're going to be very upset unless I do it, to explain what the process was that really led to that grade. And I feel like that's what she's doing here. She's attacking the process.
Mm-hmm.
I have this thing that's kind of like haunted by a ghost. It's like so stupid. It's this thing, and it just keeps like playing random music at random times. Like, it's so upsetting. But anyway, like, so sorry about that. I just want to explain what was going on. Okay, so let's continue. We have like a few minutes left.
if you guys can't give me a reason.
I'm happy to follow up with you separately to give you the data that was calibrated.
Separate from what?
I'll
We're having it
speak
now.
with revenue leadership specifically to see if we can get that for you. But Dom and
Can
I
you
did
share
not
that
have
with me
that
now?
in our meeting. I cannot share that with you right now, unfortunately. Yeah, it's understandable how you feel. And
See how she's
your
upset about the
frustration.
process.
Cannot stress that enough.
I have been working extremely hard. I just knew that this meeting was coming after knowing what's been happening with my peers and how extremely
Dan, can you just
frustrated
pause
and
that for 1
upset
second?
everyone is.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
I think this is also interesting too, right? She knew this was coming. And to
Yeah.
Ethan's point, right? You're immediately going to be in a defensive mode, completely understandable, right? But this whole notion of, how would you have done this a little bit better and a little differently? Well, one thing you definitely wouldn't be doing is you wouldn't be scheduling 15-minute calls with a bunch of people so that everybody can tell each other this is coming, get your backup, make sure you're, get really defensive here.
Yeah,
Because
get very angry by now. By the meeting is because she probably thought about what she was going to say, right? Like she probably was thinking it was unfair.
And in many ways it is, of course, right?
Yeah.
But from an organizational point of view, if you're thinking about it, it's like what you're really doing is you're setting this process up not only for failure, but writ large. You're making this much more difficult and much more challenging than it needed to be, not only by dropping people in that this person's never seen, but then lumping her in with a group of saying it's not just about you, it's a whole group of people that we're getting rid of. And then not having the data, right? You're not prepared to share with them what the data says. And everybody knows that these 15-minute calls are happening rapid fire. Like, I'm not in HR, but like all of those sound like very bad ways of approaching this.
It sounds, a little bit when they want to kill a cow, they just put them in some sort of like a hallway and they just prod it to go forward. Like, it seems like it's not a negotiation at all. It's firing someone. And I want to draw your attention. The reason it became viral, in my opinion, is because a lot of people recognize themselves in that. It's not, if it was a completely unique situation, people wouldn't be liking, sharing, commenting, and all that stuff. A lot of people probably wish they had the nerve to do what she did.
Yes.
So it's really sad to see, a process like this. And I'm sure the HR people are not that happy about having to do the dirty work for somebody else. It's pretty shitty. Let's see.
There's one other quick point here. There's a lot of, as you all know, there's a lot of conversation about generations, right? And generational and things like that. And for a lot of younger people, they see being at a job for a couple of years as a long time. And that the idea of changing jobs is a frequent notion, right? The notion of staying somewhere for 25 years is like a completely foreign concept. Yeah. And for some people, especially like viewing this video, it probably lodges in their mind like another justification for why I should be thinking about moving from place to place. Yeah. Because if people are going to see me this way and treat me this way, why would I have loyalty in that sense, right? So there's an interesting reinforcing of certain stereotypes as well here.
Especially when the CEO says, well, sometimes we fire good people, like, what the hell, dude? Yeah, what are you talking about? Why would anybody go into your company if not only has an employee said that, but you don't even admit it's a mistake? Like, you basically say, no, that's just what we do. Sometimes we fire great people. Okay, well, great. But I think, it's really interesting to me because she's a Gen Z person, and I think, anything can become content for TikTok now or YouTube because people have a phone with them. So if you see something happen on the street, there's at least 5 people with their phone documenting the whole thing. So in my opinion, companies should be aware that whatever you say might be recorded and posted online, so just be sure you can back it up. Let's see what she says.
I know you guys must not be able to understand that given in the positions that you are in, and it must be very easy for you to just have these little 10-minute, 15-minute meetings, tell someone that they're fired, completely wreck their whole life, and then that's it with no explanation. that's extremely traumatizing for people, if you can imagine that. And I don't think that this is, it's just very, very shocking. Very, very shocking. I've like really given my whole energy and life over the last 4 months to this job, and to be let go for no reason is like a huge slap in the face from a company that I really wanted to believe in.
I can absolutely understand how you feel that way, why you feel that way. And I'll be honest with you, there's nothing that we're going to say in this call in the time that we have that's going to undo the way that you feel right in this moment. I personally will do everything that I can to give you as much specific information as I can after this call. I can't make any promises. I understand where you're coming from. I can tell you that
It seems like it's such a bad approach. I mean, I think when somebody says, you're firing me for no reason, you should be able to say, no, dude, I'm not firing you for no reason. I'm firing you because we assigned you a performance. We reminded you 2 months into the thing, and now we're 3 months and you didn't meet it. Like, unless you can say that, don't even bring up a reason. It's really upsetting that they're pretending to be sad about it, when in reality, they're just lacking the information.
Yeah.
Pretty terrible. Let's see. I have a couple of minutes left.
Dom and I do care. I understand the feeling that you have right now. And I can't change that. So I'll just be honest.
But why can't, you guys have still not given me a reason why I'm being let go. Despite constant positive praise from my manager, great meetings that I'm having, the amount of activity that I have has all been positive. I have not received any negative inclination. I have not been put on a performance improvement plan, nothing. So
I think the HR people are thinking, oh, I'm not used to people responding to that. I'm used to people, just accepting and crying and leaving, Do you think it's going to become more common, people kind of like, responding back to that kind of stuff?
I don't know, man. When I see this is like aspirational to me. Not that I would ever want to. My biggest professional fear was getting laid off.
Yeah.
And then it happened.
Yeah.
The way she approached this is 1,000 times better than whatever blubbering I did in that room. So I see this and I'm like, man, she stood up for herself. But like Josh said, even though she's standing up for herself, there is no way what those two people came in to do was going to change.
Yeah.
It wasn't going to change. And so like my heart is like breaking seeing this, because it's like, I wish I could have done this. I wish I would have had the guts, the awareness. I knew my layoff was coming. I knew mine was coming. I knew what I was going to the HR for. And I still didn't have the awareness to be as present as she is.
I agree with you. I've been sometimes in situations where, I had meetings like this scheduled. I haven't been fired, but I've been warned or stuff like that. And it does wreck your mental health. It's absolutely terrible. I just remember like not being able to sleep, feeling horrible about myself, fumbling when they were presenting my performance. It's really terrible. And so this is why, you're taking people to such a dark place. You better have a good reason for it. But yeah, there's still 2 minutes and then we'll switch to the next segment.
And I cannot speak to what your manager has communicated to you directly.
But that should be the indication of
for performance based on your attainment and leading indicators of data. That is the rationale.
But I've been here for only a month after ramping, and that was during a holiday. So I don't understand can you explain what those performance metrics are? Or is that just like a vague term to give to everyone that you're speaking to today?
I'll say that the performance indicators and performance metrics are, we're not able to go into specifics. There's no situation where we will be able to go into.
Do you
I
guys
can't.
even know? Do you guys even know like why, like who you're talking to each day? Like every single 10, 15 minutes, do you guys even know who you're talking to?
You know, it reminds me when you ask a question to a student and they don't know what to answer and they try to come up, they try to like in French, we call it drown the fish in French, which is, you know, you're trying to say something and just nothing makes sense. And the guy is just, you know, he doesn't want to admit, he doesn't know the reason. That's the end of the day. I think, I don't know what you guys think, but probably I would just be a lot more clear about the fact that my role is just to fire you because it's the truth, you know. But we can come back to you with the exact reasons. Just let me loop back in, you know. But the decision was not made by me. I'm just here to give you the decision, which is what's going on. At least it would be more respectful, you know. What do you guys think? Josh, what do you think?
I think that's exactly right. I mean, you know, they're attempting to just grasp at straws, and they're sort of their replies to her are so unsatisfactory that you're right, Jay. And like, much better to simply be like, listen, we're with HR. Like, this is our job to inform you this has happened. If you want specifics, that's probably something you should talk to X, Y, and Z, and know who to talk to if she really wants, you know, probably your manager, whatever it is. But I agree. Otherwise, it just, you know, as we're all hearing and cringing at what they're saying, because it just comes across as so hollow and so it's the opposite of what they're trying to be, which is empathic, right? It's just coming across in the opposite way.
It's really contrived. It doesn't feel genuine whatsoever. It's almost like, I don't know, people pretending to be sad, people pretending to have empathy. It doesn't feel like they actually have empathy because they're so strategic with the information they're using and how they're explaining, because they're definitely trying to hide the fact that there is no reason. They agree with it. So they're just going around it, being very, very strategic while making putting on a mask of somebody who's sad. It's traumatizing. I feel for her. What do you think, Ethan?
When I watch this video, it's giving me the feeling that HR, and I know this is not reality, but it's giving me the feeling that HR got into work that morning and found out that they had to let all these people go. And this is what they came up with. Like, it feels like they just threw this together and had no preparation, didn't have any thoughtful discussion about the supporting data behind their claims. If this feels completely just ill-advised and unprepared.
I think the preparation piece is the one that stands out to me. Like, they're clearly not prepared. They didn't even think through, what if someone pushes back and asks us for what metrics are you talking about and all these kinds of things. They're not there.
Yeah, it's just really a terrible, it's a train wreck. Like, it's really not good. And this is why it became viral. It's because it's a train wreck. Had they approached it more reasonably, you know, just saying we're HR, we didn't make that decision. I don't have the data right here. I'll loop you back in, but these were made on performance. And, you know, instead of trying to pretend that they know the answer, is pretty annoying. We still have, and so Alec is saying, you know, makes me think, if this is common practice, I should hire coaches to prepare for this. Because it will happen sooner or later. And I agree. I mean, Ethan, actually, you help doctors negotiate their deals, but you would probably help a doctor if they were thinking they would be fired as well, right?
I had a doctor call me last week who had her pay cut in half. And they said, it's business. You got to keep doing the same job, same schedule. And she feels completely stuck. No. And I know that, you know, that happens to other people too. Like, it's tough out there.
It is a very, very tough world. So we just have 2 minutes left, and then we need to switch to the next
thing. Why you're letting these people go when you don't even understand like the kind of work and everything that they've put in.
I hear you and what you're saying.
It just doesn't make any sense that you guys have still not been able to give me a reason why I'm being let go.
Just from a process perspective, your questions are valid. This isn't going to be the forum in the situation where we're able to go into the detail that you're looking for.
But then when? If it's not right as I'm getting fired, then it's certainly not going to be after when I'm no longer part of the company.
No.
So I don't think there's anything we can say in this moment or today, Brittany, that's going to change the way that you feel.
That's the third time she said
Again, like understandable. I'm taking notes.
And it's wrong. It's wrong because at the end of the day, her goal is not to change how people feel. Her goal is to explain why they're being let go. Like, why are they so focused on trying to protect her feelings when it's objectively a terrible situation they're putting her in? I don't understand. Just say that you don't know and that you're going to reschedule the meeting and then come back with the data. Don't assume it's because of performance, because even their CEO said that sometimes they just fire high performers. Like, it's crazy. It's insane.
And feedback, and we'll circle back.
Yeah, I know you. That finessed me too, but that's
of the meeting. It's not going to change the outcome of the situation today, so it may be best if I do get into more of the specifics of what the next steps are, because I think it's clear that you have questions that we cannot give answers to. And if you'd be open to it, I'd love to move into what the next steps are so that you're not any further blindsided than you already feel.
okay.
She's crying.
Oh, man.
Poor thing.
You know, that comment that she
Again,
just made, had she made that comment at the very beginning,
Yeah.
like this whole thing would have not transpired like this.
Yeah.
That we don't have the answers you're looking for. Our job is to inform you you're no longer with the company. Like,
And it's yeah.
because what they just put her through was a palliative process of trying to make it sound like this was going to be better, but it did more damage than just simply, you know, as we talked about, giving her the clarity that, hey, we were told that you're being let go. Here's, if you've got questions, speak to your manager about what metrics, you know, blah blah blah, and
Used.
at the end, you know.
Yeah, just say your manager is available to tell you how this decision was made. But unfortunately, we're just here to deliver the news, which is a shitty process, by the way. But, you know, like, it's not how you want to do things. But if you're stuck in that situation which is really bad, where you don't know where you're firing someone and you put your foot in your mouth by explaining a reason you can't back up with actual data, then probably just be upfront about it. If you really care about the person and you really care about their feelings, it's kind of like ripping the Band-Aid. Like, don't twist it in. Don't try to make it seem like it's something that it's not. It really reminds me, you know, if I ask a question to a student and then they say, well, your question is valid, I'm like, no, don't do that. Just answer the question or tell me you don't know the answer. Don't try to drown the fish and like make me feel like you answered when you don't know the answer. It's so annoying. They just don't want to be in that position. I think we have 10 seconds. I don't think
I'm really sorry that you're having this experience and feeling this way. One of the things that we want to confirm is your personal email address, because that's where all.
Yeah, that's where we'll send you the check or whatever. Yeah, it's really, really bad. There is good news though after all of this. So let me just share. She actually found another job, and so let me just see if I can have it. I think it's here. So I found her on LinkedIn. Her name is actually not Peach. It's Pitch. I have no idea. So she says, I'm so excited to announce I'm joining EQ App team to help them promote their launch of their new AI tool, EQ Buddy. I mean, you know, basically she explains that, and she was interviewed there. I'm really glad that they counted on her and they gave her a chance. The only drawback, in my opinion, of doing what she's done is you're kind of sending the signal that if something doesn't go right, you might expose everybody. And so I think some employers might be worried about that. But at the end of the day, it did work out for her. She really did what she needed to do. What do you think, if you had to like summarize this whole experience? What do you think of all of this?
It's sad, man. It takes me back to when I went through that and trying to somehow avoid the outcome that I knew was inevitable in the conversation. So it just makes me sad for her, but it also makes me think about all of the other thousands of people who are going through that, who don't have that platform.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why it went viral. It didn't go viral because she's unique in that. It went viral because a lot of people agree, that it's a situation that happens. What about you, Josh, if you had to summarize this
Well,
experience?
we've talked about sort of it's a bit of a case study of how not to handle this kind of thing. But I think, when I work with people to help them prepare or talk through a negotiation, whatever it might be, I kind of come back around to the point that Ant made in the chat, which is, do you really want to keep working for this company? If they're treating you this way now, do you think that's going to change down the road? Like if you're dealing with a difficult client, and I work with a lot of different like engineering firms, for example, and they have a lot of really difficult clients that they work with. And I say, when they're bending over backwards to try to salvage the relationship, and I say, listen, can we just hit pause for a minute and go to the balcony and say, most of your contracts are downers, like you're not making money, you're spending way more time than you thought as a result of this. Have you guys ever thought about firing the client because this is not working for you? To Anne's point, right? And when I used to say that, initially they were like, oh God, no, we would never do that. And then they realized, wait a minute, we're actually going down a rabbit hole here that is not beneficial to us in any way. Now, it's in order to get yourself to where what Anne is saying, which I kind of agree with, of course, we're back to BATNA and alternatives, right? That you've got to start thinking, I'm working with this company, they've got a lot of things I'm not really sure I agree with. I should start exploring. And to Ethan's point, right? I should start exploring what are my alternatives so that I've got some of these things in the pipeline in case something happens. That's part of the piece when I'm trying to work with folks to say, look, if you really want to be prepared, you should start thinking about some of these other dimensions so that if something does happen, you're taken by surprise, but you're not unprepared. And there's a difference, right? That you've got some of that lined up.
Okay, you guys, so this is the end of this segment, Master Negotiators React. Thank you so much to both of you for all of your insights. We've had also great comments in the chat. So thank you for everybody who's been commenting. Please follow my guests on LinkedIn if you haven't done so already, and stick around for the next segment, which is Master Negotiators Q&A. All right, everybody. So this is the third and last segment of today's live stream. This is Master Negotiators Q&A, where I feature seasoned negotiators answering real-world questions from Reddit. So our negotiation experts provide concrete advice on a range of topics from managing everyday conflicts to mastering complex negotiations. And I have two guests today. My first guest is Ethan Nkana, who is the founder of Rocky Mountain Physician Agency, an agency negotiating deals for doctors. Ethan has experience in healthcare leadership, law, and business education. Hello, Ethan.
Hey, good to see you, Dan.
Where do you come up with the name Rocky Mountain Physician Agency?
So I'm based out of Denver, Colorado, and so the Rocky Mountains are just in my backyard, and so that was kind of the foundation of the name.
I've never been to Colorado, but I hear it's a great state. I hear it's beautiful.
It is. I've been here for 10 years, and that's the longest I've ever lived anywhere in my life, so I love it here.
That's amazing. And so my second guest is Josh Weiss, who's an iconic figure in the negotiation and conflict resolution world. He's the co-founder of the Global Negotiation Initiative at Harvard University. He's also the author of a book. His latest book is the Book of Real World Negotiations. You can go buy it on Amazon. I'll link it in the description box. But you can also get a copy for free if you're attending the live stream. To get a chance to win a copy on Kindle for this book, you have to comment during the show. So post a comment on LinkedIn, YouTube, or Facebook, and we'll feature it, and you'll be considered to win the free copy. So this is a segment I really like because we are going to answer genuine questions from people that people have been asking on Reddit. And a lot of times you'll see that nobody answers. And so people have tons of questions and nobody has really good answers. So I thought, let's just try to see if we can answer it as best as possible. So let me share this screen. I think this is going to work. Okay, and I'm going to do it this way. Okay, can you guys see properly, or should I use? Yeah, okay. So the first one is from the subreddit negotiation, where a lot of questions get asked, but not a lot of answers get provided. So customer refuses to pay invoices for 2 months. Howdy, I'm a digital marketing freelancer, and I have a client I've been working with for years. But in the last half year, they keep struggling to pay me on time. And in the last 2 months, I haven't been paid for my services. The client pays well in terms of the amount, but it's still crazy for me to call him every month to pay my bills on time. How would you approach such situation? So who wants to go first? Maybe Josh, do you want to go?
Sure. I mean, I'm happy to give you my.
How would you deal with a customer who's not paying you on time?
Yeah, and I have my own consulting company, so I absolutely do this from time to time when I don't get paid. So I will reach out and I will kind of name this as the first piece and say, listen, I provided you with this service. Did what you asked, etc., and want to just let you know that this still hasn't happened, because one of the things I find is that sometimes the people that I've worked with think you got paid and people within the finance has not gotten to you. So I want to see if there's some disconnect before I sort of take another step. And I've actually had somebody come back in the 2 different occasions I can think of in the last year where this has happened. I've had in both times they've come back and said, wow, we thought you would have been paid by now. Let us get on it. Right. So there was an internal problem that was important to sort of uncover. But the other piece is to say to them, listen, I enjoy working with you guys, but here's the implication for me. Like, I have my own cash issues and payroll problems and things along those lines. And so if you aren't going to be able to do this, I got to sort of rethink whether we can have this kind of relationship, or change it up and say, maybe I need to get you to pay me half up front before this happens, and et cetera, things along those lines. But those are some different ways in which I have tried to deal with this kind of situation. So it's really sort of making sure that the left hand and the right hand know what's going on within a company. 2, if they do, then to let them know the kind of impact and the implications on me. And again, if I've been working with somebody for a while and I have some clients that I've worked with for more than 10, 15, 20 years, and their intention is not for this to happen, but they maybe don't know about it. So, and again, maybe to have to change the arrangement if they can't commit to paying me within contract. The other thing I will say, by the way, is that I structure my contracts when I do work like this, that if I'm not paid within 30 days, there's a penalty clause that kicks in, which is a very useful way of getting people to pay you on time.
Yeah, I mean, I think adding a penalty is a great way to make people pay you on time. What do you think, Ethan?
You're going to be able to clip all of my answers. They're all going to sound exactly the same. I think the first thing I do is I get curious. Yeah. What's the friction? What's the friction? Like, if the business is going under, if the business is having payroll issues, accounting issues, what's the friction that's causing this? And once I understand that, then I would want to know, okay, what systems, processes can we put in place to relieve that friction? So I think Josh brought up a big one. I use retainers in my business. I was doing a ton of free work until I realized I need people to pay up front to have some skin in the game. The other thing I would think about is there an auto pay opportunity where I don't have to worry about cutting or, calling you for a check, and you don't have to worry about cutting me the check. And so what is the friction? Is it lack of money? To Josh's point, there's processes behind the scenes that might be convoluted. And then how can we partner together to remove that friction on your side, understanding what that is?
I think those are absolutely great points. And it reminds me a little bit, if I think about my therapist or my gym trainer, they all have a clause that says, if I don't show up, I'm still paying for it, Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of like this incentive. If you want to cancel, you have to do it at least 48 hours in advance. And if you don't show up, the guy is just still going to sit around doing nothing, but he's still going to be paid. Mm-hmm. And to me, it's something that I've seen people struggle with, especially when they give like advising to people or consulting. You do the meeting for free, and then the person just doesn't respond to emails with all that kind of stuff. Just make a penalty. Just have a penalty, explain it earlier, get paid in advance, that kind of stuff. Get a credit card on file, and just make it work for you. Because at the end of the day, people have a million reasons not to pay you on time. God knows what it is.
Mhm.
It could be financial, but could also be that the person is bad at responding to emails, or they're dealing with a sickness or whatever. So yeah, penalty is a great way. Especially, you have to say it up front. Like, yeah, you can't just come up with a penalty. You just have to tell people you'll have an increase of 2% a month, in your bill unless you pay. But I was advising somebody I know who was giving private lessons to just start telling people you're still gonna have to pay for the lesson if you cancel, because she had tons of people cancel on her. And she was feeling horrible about billing them. Like, she was feeling horrible about the situation. And I was telling her, it's not your responsibility. Like, you showed up on time. They're just the ones who didn't show up. So they deserve to pay.
That's the tough thing about, I think, entrepreneurship, running your own business. I have a buddy who he has his own business as well. He just definitely has a very different perspective to how he responds to situations than I do. So if he saw this, he would say, well, fire the client. If they're not paying you on time, just fire the client. But I think running a business, you understand every client to some degree is essential to your business, and how can you make it work? And then maybe they get to a point where it's not beneficial to your business to work with them financially, or stress, or whatever else. But I think any business owner or person who lives on, what they earn from their business needs to focus on, how do I resolve this in a way that everybody's happy, the person paying and the person getting paid for their work.
And I like also the idea of being curious. I can think about, for example, a few months ago, I had missed a mortgage payment, which was not because of a financial situation. It was really just because I was wiring money from one account to the other, and the Interact transfer went into my spam, and so I didn't deposit it. And in my mind, I was thinking I've deposited it, but I hadn't. Like, turns out I just missed that email. And so the bank called me, and they wanted to talk about it, and they wanted to know why that was happening. And they were very kind about it. And I told them, they wanted to know if I was having financial problems or something. And I was telling them, no, like, it's really just like an email. And so they said, okay, well, just create something in your calendar, just reminding you to check, on the 6th of the month. And that's what I do now. And so it's been working great. But sometimes, people just forget to pay because they read your email when they were driving, and they forget, so you need to just make it their responsibility.
Well, and I think to that point really fast, there's that desire to always react and to react quickly. And I think if you can just pause and just go to the balcony and say, all right, well, what other possible explanations are there here, right? What else could be going on? So you begin to think maybe they're not just a jerk, but maybe there's something happening. And if I can understand what that is, then, it's going to make it a lot easier for me to manage this. And that's the assumptions game. I often say that I find that assumptions are sort of the silent killers of effective negotiation, because we just make them all the time. And before we know it, we've got a whole story laid out that's really not based on anything other than, what we think might be going on. And so I think slowing it down, and to Ethan's point, checking in with them and being like, hey guys, like, this isn't quite working. Let's talk about what we do with it. And is there something I should know on your end about what's going on here?
I have to say, I really enjoyed the way my bank approached it, because it's not nice to be in that situation where you missed a payment, especially when I'm very clear on, like, I don't want to be in that situation. And it was nice of them to really just inquire about what was going on, to see if maybe there is an accommodation or something that can be put in place. But I was telling them, this is not the issue. The issue is really just I missed the wire. But they could have assumed I'm a loser, or I'm broke, or whatever. They could have just assumed that and sent me threats by email. And they didn't do that. Like, they approached it very well. So I really appreciated that.
That's to me, that's the difference between a good and a bad business. A good business understands that you're their client and that you're human and they got to talk to you to figure out what's going on. And they'll, and then others that simply send you threatening letters or whatever, right? That you're going to want to stay with that bank now because of how that small gesture, right? It wasn't like this, magnanimous sort of huge gesture. All it took was a call saying, "Hey, did you know that you missed this payment?" Right?
Yeah, and they really genuinely wanted to know, like, can you tell us, what's the reason, like what happened, and I really appreciated it because, you don't want to be portrayed as somebody who's like missing payments or trying not to pay for something. It's really not, most people don't want to be portrayed as that. And I think it's a minority of people who actually do it. I think most people, when they miss a payment, there's a reason for it. Could be that they just don't manage their email well, or it could be whatever, but I find it interesting. It's something people struggle with. Okay, so now let's move to the next one. So this one is called job negotiation advice. I've just received a verbal job offer for a nonprofit. Generally excited about the people and organization, but this is my first potential new job in almost 8 years. Their vacation policy seems pretty low to me, only 15 days a year. Also, any advice on negotiating to get 20 days? They're offering $5K more in salary than I was expecting. What do you guys think? Ethan, how would you advise this person to approach that negotiation?
Oof, this is a tough one because I often will kind of take the approach that, like, if in this situation, let's say she's talking to one employer and she goes in and says, "Can you give me more PTO, paid time off?" I don't feel like that's a negotiation. I feel like she's requesting for them to make a change. Now, if she were to say, like, "Hey, I'll take lower pay in exchange for more time off," then maybe that's a negotiation. I don't know if that's in her best interest, but I would say first and foremost, you have to ask. You have to say, "Hey, I'm super grateful, excited to join the team. In exchange, it looks like the market for my skill set, experience, and this job is 25 days to 30 days of PTO." And then hopefully they'll come back and say, "Well, we can't do 25 to 30, we can do 20. I mean, that's the way I would approach it, but I would not feel optimistic about my chances for success in that situation.
Yeah. Josh, how would you approach that situation?
Yeah, I mean, I think to Ethan's point, I think I would, the first thing I would do is, be clear about what's the industry standard here, right? What's reasonable, so you have some measure. I think the other challenge that comes up a lot in this kind of a scenario is sort of the precedent problem, right? Which is if they were to give you 20 days, they've got to do that for other people, or, and often people say, "Well, how's anybody else going to find out?" And I'm like, well, listen, it's a nonprofit. It's probably not a huge place. And, people talk to each other. So you have to think about how can this not be a precedent setting kind of thing? And sometimes that could be the conversation. Like in your mind, I think it's valuable to say, how could I frame this so that, it's not going to be viewed as a precedent setting thing. Like, for example, when people are saying, a lot of times employers will come back to you and say, "Well, sorry, but like, this is the range that we have, and what you're asking goes past that," right? Mm-hmm. And so we can't say that because then we have this issue. Well, right. So one typical response to that kind of thing is to say, "Well, could you do a one-time bonus, right? That doesn't reflect the salary, and asking you to go beyond something that others are bound by." But, and usually companies have that kind of flexibility around some of those things. So I would think about some of those pieces, and just see what's possible. I think to Ethan's point, it doesn't hurt to ask, but you want to be thinking about, well, if they come back and say, "Sorry, this is what everybody has." I mean, you could go to, well, okay, I get it. I think the one thing I'm worried about is my ability to last over the long term, and the burnout factor. which I think is reasonable to sort of highlight.
But I agree with you that it does create an expectation. If you give 20 days to one person, it's a recipe for disaster if everybody has 15 days, because they will share it at some point. They will figure it out. So yeah, absolutely. I know, Josh, you have to go. I'm so sorry. I took you longer than I thought. So please go buy Josh's book, the Book of Real World Negotiations. You can get it on Amazon. Absolutely great book. Thank you so much, Josh, for joining us.
Thank you.
And I'll talk to you soon. Ethan, do you have a couple of minutes to go through
Yeah,
my
I can
last
hang out.
question? Okay.
I can hang out. Yeah.
So
Thanks, guys. Take care, everybody.
thank you. Have a good one. Bye-bye. Okay, so this one is actually really interesting. This one is about negotiating with a non-negotiator. And it's something that some people go through, which is a divorce. And it's a really, really difficult situation. But sometimes you have to negotiate with somebody who's unreasonable or not negotiator. So the person says, I'm in the mediation for the separation of assets with my ex. I'm assuming they meant. We have been stuck for a couple of months. I have put forth a set of requests that are somewhat inflated, not as a formal proposal, but a list of what I want. There is lots of room for compromise, and I'm very willing. My ex doesn't respond or make offers or counter offers. He's frozen, asks for more and more detailed questions. We're working with a professional mediator who is very laid back and doesn't touch the conflict of the situation. So pretty shitty mediator. You tell me, because it's literally their job. But okay, doesn't do much to facilitate. Here again, also their job. I'd hate to have to start over with a new mediator, though. What can I do to get unstuck? My main question is, should I give him a proposal? I don't want to be too confrontational and make it worse. That is my role in this relationship. I asked the mediator to be a go-between and suggest he be more proactive and get prepared to make decisions. Do you have any advice for me? It's making me feel horrible every time we meet, and I don't want it to be over. But do I have a bottom line that I need in order to settle? Mm-hmm. So very interesting question. What would you say to that person?
Yeah, I think she's done the right thing first and foremost by going to the mediator to say, I need more from you. I need you to help bring both of us to the table so that we can make some progress, which it doesn't sound like that's happening right now. So I think she's done the right thing first by getting the mediator a little more involved in some of her concerns. Secondarily, the thought that's going through my head is, if she gives him a proposal, does that compel him to respond?
Yeah.
Because to me, it seems like she says, well, do I just give him a proposal? Well, he'll probably just do the same thing that he's already done, which is not respond, not make any counter proposals. So I don't know that how valuable that step would be. So to me, you need to take that action. One, given him the proposal, despite the confrontation you think that's going to cause, if that has any chance of making progress. And then secondarily, the thing that she's already done, which is the mediator needs to be the one to step up. I think the easy thing is to say, go the legal route and just, go to divorce court. But clearly they've gone this route because it suits them better. And so how can they, within the confines of mediation, how can she get what she needs from, she has a bottom line, how can she get from what she needs from this exchange? She may just need to bring in a new mediator, frankly, if you can't compel him to take some action.
Yeah, it seems like the guy seems to be a bit frozen. He's a bit paralyzed, which is typical of people who just don't know how to respond, right? It's like fight, flight, freeze. Sometimes people just get paralyzed. They don't know what to say. It seems also that with somebody who's paralyzed, maybe a mediator is not the right approach. Maybe you want arbitration. Maybe you want somebody, right, who'd be able to actually say, you explain, each of you explain your case, and then I'll make a decision. Yeah, because I'm sure he doesn't want to be in that situation either, right? Nobody wants. But sometimes mediation, it's kind of like everything, right? Some mediators are great, some are not so great. it sounds like this one doesn't know how to deal with somebody who's frozen.
Yeah, that's a really good recommendation. Yeah, yeah, arbitration really smart.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe the guy, there are cultures, right, where
Sure.
people respond to conflict by just taking it all and they don't respond. And it's very confusing sometimes for North Americans because we're used to going at it, and then the person is going to be maybe angry back, but the mediator can deal with that. I think it's very confusing if the person just doesn't say anything and just nods along.
Yeah,
Um,
agreed.
yeah. So let's do a last one, and then we'll close the show. Let me see. We had this one is interesting because I think a lot of people, I see more and more students tell me that. So
Yes.
negotiating time off rather than dollars per hour. I was recently employed at an organization part-time since October. My boss told me to start thinking about transitioning to a full-time role within the next year because one person or two may be leaving our department. I'm interested in a full-time position at this organization due to its benefits. However, I like my current schedule that only requires me to go to the office 4 days a week instead of 5. Rather than negotiating the pay, I'd like to negotiate my time off. And they really put it in bold. And so they're very clear about what they want. When the full-time role becomes available, do you all think this is appropriate bringing it up? I'm hesitant because one person at the office was doing the 4-day work week, so working more work hours on other days, but this won't be permitted for him anymore on March onwards. So he'll have to readapt to the 5-day week. Since I'm mostly working the weekend shifts and I'm the only one and nobody wants to work on weekends, do you think it's fair for me to try to propose or negotiate this? Any ideas or strategies on how to bring this up when the open position opens would be welcome. And so once again, rather than the money, I'd like to negotiate as a 4-day work week. So what do you think would be the best approach in that situation?
One thing I want to point out that you called out, JN, is a lot of doctors I talk to across the country who are coming out of training, so they're in their 30s, early 40s. They talk a lot about this, about life balance. How do I have time for my hobbies, my side hustles, my family, my friends, all the things that make me a whole person? So this is extremely relatable. I live in the world of pragmatism.
Right.
And so I'll say the practical result here and then talk through maybe some solutions. So this person, and again, this shows my bias to these situations, but they bring up, hey, I want to work 4 days and I'll be willing to take X number of dollars to do it. The employer's just going to say no. And when they say no, what's your response?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, I guess I'll work the regular schedule. That's not a negotiation. You can propose, ask, request all you want. But if the employer doesn't have any reason that they're compelled to take action, you're just asking them for a favor. So
because you have no alternative, right?
Yeah.
You don't have an alternative, so you can just accept whatever they give you.
So in this situation, the person says, I want this schedule. I'd be willing to take less money. Okay, cool. That's the angle you want to take. I don't ever take the approach from my clients that they're going to take less money. I never take that approach. I assume that they're being underpaid as is, and so we're always asking for more. Someone might say in some unique circumstance that I'm willing to take less money because I'm not the primary breadwinner, I'm independently wealthy. In that case, cool. 4-day work week, tell them you'll take less pay. But for most of us, that's just not an appropriate exchange. I need every dollar you're offering me, and my schedule is a convenience rather than a necessity. So I know that's kind of a bleak answer, Jan, but I think the person in that situation is doing their best by saying, I'll adjust my pay, but it seems like you're cutting off your nose to spite your face here.
Yeah. The 4-day work week is an interesting topic that's coming up more and more. And I talked a bunch about it, about why I think it's kind of like the natural evolution. We went from 70 hours to 60, 50, 40. and probably we're going to go down, with AI and technology. I have to say though that the 4-day work week, if it's to intensify your days and work the same hours but in 4 days, it's been tried before and it doesn't work. It's been tried in the 70s. There was a big wave of organizations who said, hey, we're going to try the 4-day work week, and they all conducted studies to see how it works. And this is the pattern in all of these studies. People, it's on a trial basis. People are excited about it at first because they say I can work 4 days, and then 6 months into it, they all want to leave the program because they just realize, because it's too much. Like you have to do, instead of working 8 hours a day, then you're working 10 hours a day, and it builds up over time that you get tired and all that stuff. And especially this person is saying at the end, I don't have a solid reason why other than just trying to find more work-life balance, because I feel like I've forgotten how to live recently. And all I can tell you is that if your answer to that is to just have 10-hour work days instead of 8-hour work days, you're going to be so much more tired. Like you're not going,
That is a really interesting perspective and analysis. And, I think you're right. Like employers they are motivated to get as much out of us as employees as they can. And I think it's our responsibility to protect those boundaries. And as we've moved to more remote work, I think it becomes easier to impinge upon the fringes of your day. Right. You might answer another email or, text your team, or you might, that time you were commuting, maybe now you're in front of your computer. When you might have had some time to decompress. So I think it is important for employees to say, and I tell this to all my doctors, you must identify what's important to you first and then go talk to your employer. But don't go in, with no plan, hoping that they're going to pay you more money. That's just not realistic, or just give you a better schedule just because you ask for it. Like it's just
and also give you a better schedule when they've denied it to somebody.
There you go.
Right before. Like they're never going to do that because then they're opening the door for the other guy. And there is a reason why they're denying it. Probably maybe they just figured out what these companies figured out in the 70s, which is that, it sounds like a good idea. Like we have in French this expression, which is fausse bonne idée, which is like a fake good idea. And so it sounds like a good, it's something that sounds like a good idea when you first think about it. And then when the rubber meets the road, you realize, well, actually it doesn't work.
I love that.
Terrible idea. But no, really, like just some companies think that the 4-day work week just means you're going to ask people to work like 40 hours, but in 4 days. And that does not work for most people. I'm sure some people have the stamina to do that. But if you're already exhausted and tired and you're trying to have more work-life balance, it's not going to solve your problem.
That is fascinating, Jan. I would have, when I was working a W-2 job, working in hospitals, I would have loved, at the time, I would love to have a 4-day work week. I thought, that would have been way easier. I already work 10 hours a day anyway, but you're right. It sounds like over time, that's just not a sustainable model for us.
6 months down the road, I think it was something like 70-80% of people want to quit the program. They just realize, and so they're willing to go back to 5 days a week just because it's easier for them.
That is fascinating.
The 3 days, because I think really when you think about it, you get exponentially more tired as the day goes by, right? Like at first you're fine, and then it kind of like goes exponential at the end. If after 8 hours, if I told you now you have to stay 2 more hours, you're not gonna be as productive. You're gonna be tired. You're gonna be exhausted, cranky, all that stuff. And I think over several months, the third day you get out of this just doesn't compensate for it. It doesn't compensate for the fact you've spent 4 miserable days. But some people I know in healthcare, some people work like 15 hours a day or something, right? So, but they're all miserable too. Like if you look in the ER, everybody's tired. Everybody, like the doctors are overworked. It's really hard. But I agree with you. I think the main point here is she's asking a favor because she has no alternative. And it seems like the main interest she has about this organization is the benefits, which is what she says. Tons of organizations have good benefits. Just start looking around and explain. But if you want to work 4 days, then do a part-time. Don't do a full-time. A full-time on 4 days, in my opinion, is not a good idea. Otherwise, all organizations would have switched by then, right? Like people, if it was such a great idea, to do that, people would have switched, and this guy, that the previous employee wouldn't be required to do 5 days.
5 days, exactly.
Yeah, that's a shitty conversation to have, right? When you give somebody 4 days a week and you say, well, actually, let me just walk back on that. You have to come back for 4 days. That's terrible. Okay, well, that's it. That's it for us. And so Anne is saying the 4-day work week is the 5-day workload. I think, yeah, absolutely. This is not the way to go. And in a lot of organizations, actually, what they do now, and I feel like what they're doing is a negotiation process. It's just not explained this way. What they're doing, all of these new studies that came out, they say, we're not intensifying it, we're reducing your hours, but you have to be as productive in 35 hours than you were at 40. And if you can maintain that, then we'll let you work 4 days a week. And a lot of times, in Iceland, for example, everybody was talking about the 4-day work week because they did that with like 20% of the workforce to give it a test. But what you see there is actually they had an afternoon off, and so it's not really 4 days. But the deal was you need to be more productive, in your 4 days so that the productivity is maintained. And they say if you can't maintain your productivity, we'll switch back to 5 days.
Wow.
And newsflash, everybody was able to maintain it in 4 days. And they explain a lot that it's, we kind of reduced meeting times and we take fewer breaks and all that stuff. And they feel more energized. So maybe they're also more productive. I feel that a big part of it that people are not willing to admit is that for a lot of office workers, you don't have a steady stream of 40 hours. It just varies. Mm-hmm. And requiring people to be present for 40 hours just generates people trying to BS the metric, and they're just doing impression management by pretending to work and, being very noisy and like they're typing and all that stuff. But in the end, if they could leave without having any negative backlash, they would leave. And so correct. I feel just because, they aligned, you're going to be more productive and you can leave for 4 days. You can just leave an extra day, and people, it just works everywhere. There was some press coverage on the one company that went back to the 5-day work week, but I think it's like 99% of companies, it just works, people.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, and it's kind of like this counterintuitive thing, which is that Iceland, they were working something like 50 hours a week. But if you looked at their overall productivity, they were among the least productive developed countries. And so the counterintuitive thing was maybe people work too long hours. Maybe that's why they're not as productive. Mm-hmm. So they went down to 40, which for them is a 4-day work week, but for most people is not, right? Okay, so that's it for us today. So Ethan, thank you so much. I'm so happy we had a chance to catch up and to talk. Please, if you're in the crowd, go follow Ethan on LinkedIn. Also, go follow Josh on LinkedIn. Please sign up also for my newsletter. There is the little QR code you can scan. This is how I send invitations for my next events. And
buy Josh's book.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Josh has a book. Go buy it. We will pick randomly somebody who commented today to have a free Kindle version. And Ethan, when you have a book, I hope you come on the show and we'll promote it. Absolutely. Yeah. Ethan, thank you so much. Everybody, thank you so much for your time. And I will see you next week. Have a good one, everybody.